Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back. My name is Daniel Gabali. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, which is Hometown Chess Hero. Very lucky to be joined today by Tristan Cox, the one and only. How you doing today, Tristan?
I'm really good, thanks, Danny. How are you?
You're looking very smart with this kind of cross and nice little water cooler in the background. But it's quite hot there, right? Where you're at? What's the
Yeah,
temperature?
it's sweltering.
Is it?
I have no idea. I never pay any attention. I just know it's hot as balls.
I was in Hungary recently. I played a chess tournament and. It's pretty much like 34, 33, 35. But I quite enjoyed it. But you do have to be wary. You do have to put on the skin cream, skin tanned cream, and all that kind of stuff. Skin lotion, because suntan cream, I should say. Because obviously there's dangers of skin cancer now with the rising global temperatures. But today we're going to talk about preparation. So yeah, I mean, I think would it be fair to say over the last few years, Tristan, obviously with the advent of computers and you have neural networks, that preparation has changed a great deal. But you have worked with players, some players in particular like Amit Gartzi. So could you tell me a little bit how you've helped Amit to improve concretely?
Okay, I don't think it's any big secret that kind of the weakest area of Hamit's game was his openings. Like incredibly talented player overall, but been playing the same openings for years and years. Not really done any systematic work to kind of fill in, like holes in his repertoire or trying to um try and playing in different styles, like you typically play like very quiet kind of retty kind of stuff or King's Indian attack type things, not really aggressive theoretically. And I've been trying to help him just to widen his repertoire a lot, fix different holes, stuff like that.
So when he's white, is he now playing 1E4 and he's going down the main line Sicilian?
No, not quite that aggressive, but he has been playing some like transposing into some D4 stuff, some sharp Catalans, things like that.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Yeah, because
and
I
yeah,
was
he's definitely playing more adventurously.
okay, so that's interesting because I was reading a book, currently reading a book about Rouser. I don't know if this is somebody you've heard of, Rouser, because
Yeah.
there's a Richter Rouser variation of the Sicilian. So he made a lot of theoretical improvements, and one of them was the Richter Rouser where black goes knight c6, and then white goes bishop g5. I think it's like, have you ever seen that film Total Recall? He
Yeah,
goes,
long time
yeah,
ago, but yeah.
yeah. See the party, Richter. So he has this fight with is it Michael Ironside at the end? And then basically they're in the lift and his arms get chopped off. And he says he throws him down. He says, see you at the party, Richter. See you at the party. I always wanted to say that. But sorry if there's any kids watching. Anyway, it's a good film. Check it out. It's made in 1990 by Paul Verhoeven. But anyway, yeah, so the interesting thing about Rouser was that he was doing 16 because he was totally obsessed with chess, right? And this is like obviously pre-computers. You're talking about 1920s, 1930s, much earlier in the Soviet Union. He was completely obsessed with preparation. Probably these days he would get an autism kind of, diagnosis. But
Sure.
yeah, so he ended up in a mental asylum because he was so like, and I think you actually see that now with possibly with someone like Kramnik, who's like done a huge amount of chess and he's possibly having some kind of midlife crisis. Obviously, Bobby Fischer was the most famous example. Paul Morphy as well, totally obsessed with chess. I think there is a danger that you could do too much preparation. But one of the things I read about Rouser was that he wasn't a fan of the Reti systems because he thought that if you go G3, Bishop G2, Black could eventually play like Rook B8 and avoid the pressure from the bishop, and also potentially exchange the light square bishops, which would make the white king weak. So I thought that was one interesting thing I read about that. But another thing I noticed the other day when I was preparing the Catalan, Tristan, is I could understand in a way why a lot of the top players are going away from, um, you know, normal classical chess because it's so analyzed now. Like if you play the Catalan and you go like d4. Let's say the Catalan, so d4, knight f6, c4, e6. It seems to be played in 90% of games now when you're white and you play d4. They always play this move on knight f6, e6, knight f3, d5, g3. Bishop e7, bishop g2, castles,
Yeah, that's
castles, d takes c4, and now queen c2. Because the problem is if you don't go queen c2, often you're worse. You go knight c3, you get a bit of pawn, you're worse, right? So you go queen c2, they
sure.
go a6. Right? This has all been known for many, many years. You have to take on c4. There's nothing you could do creatively there. You probably have to take the pawn. You could go a4 actually. That's another main line, but that's also been
Well, this
analysed.
rugby one is interesting. Carlson won with that recently, although yeah, it has kind of been analysed out.
Yeah, and again, but as soon as it comes on the board, then people are just running engines through it night and day, and like
Sure.
it's very. This is why I think, yeah, I can understand in a way that in a lot of these lines, these main lines in particular, that people are finding it's analysed to death. But anyway, uh, so what about having a look at a specific example of preparation? We can come back to some of the questions later, but have you got a
Sure.
specific? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. One
And
second.
you can tell that I've written a script for this video, can't you? Just this is part of the problem.
Okay, I've just sent a
Okay,
request.
okay, I'll allow you to share. Cool.
Okay, one second. Okay. So the first game I wanted to show was a game I had a few years ago against an international master from Myanmar,
Oh, nice,
Win.
nice. Oh, wow, that's a great
Um,
one.
and this I thought this was really interesting because he's very, very similar with White to Amit. Like he's a lifelong kind of King's Indian attack Reti player.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
and I had a big think about this, and I kind of feel like a lot of people, kind of when they're facing someone much higher rated than them, kind of let themselves get bullied. And I
Right.
just decided really resolutely I wasn't going to let that happen. I was just going to play an aggressive game and not really respect his rating, which I think is kind of the best way to go.
Is
Because I think
this?
a lot of, sorry, go on.
Sorry, yeah, no, I was going to say, is this the highest rated player you've beaten with the black pieces, or
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
what about with the white pieces? Have you beaten some of the high rated ones?
I've beaten a 24-15 Neverov, or it was 24-20 at the
Oh,
time, something like that.
Valery Neverov from Ukraine. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
played him before. Yeah, very nervous character, right? But good player. I
yeah.
mean, I've lost to him before in Capella Grand. Do you ever play Capella Grand?
No, I haven't.
There's a famous story about. Sorry to once again.
Go on.
You always get with my videos. I go off on a tangent, right? You know. It's
I
a
hadn't.
famous anecdote about this guy goes off to a chess tournament, right? It's a little bit like Capella Grand, right? He goes off to a chess tournament. He comes back. He says, he looks really depressed. He says, um, his friend goes to him, "Why are you so depressed? Like, how'd you get on?" I said, "Ah, yeah, yeah, I finished third." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean you finished third? That's a great result." He said, "Who finished first and second?" He goes, "Two coach loads of Russians." You know. But I think the way the guy told it, it was a Danish guy called Per that told me this anecdote joke. But the way he told it was better. I think it was funnier when he told it. But anyway, yeah, let's have a look at this game then, Tristan. Yeah, let's just get into it, mate.
Yeah, like I said, I think a lot of people get bullied kind of and or try and play too solidly.
I've
And I think
never
a lot
been
of strong
bullied in my life, mate. I've never been bullied. I just get that out of there.
I just feel like strong players like it if you go solid and then they just get a no risk technical game
All
and
right.
just going to grind you down. So I feel like it's better to just go for it.
Mm,
So I risked playing this. I kind of a little bit like if I was a bit afraid he might play reverse Grunfeld, where you have to know an absolute ridiculous amount of theory, but
mm,
I was just kind of I'd seen that he was kind of quite lazy with his repertoire, so I didn't think he would do that. So I
right.
managed to get a full just reverse King's Indian. And then I'd seen that in these lines, even though white's a tempo up, it doesn't seem to matter that much at all. Like it can even help black sometimes because you haven't necessarily castled and you can do more aggressive options, stuff like
Right.
that. Or white has to play a committal move.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So I'd
interesting you
prepared
go at
very
H5
aggressive.
there. Was that a computer suggestion? Because computers love playing like they love playing
So I
H1,
think
I've noticed.
it was a combination of like there was some recommendation by Selecki in a chessable course and
Right.
some computer prep that I'd combined. I can't remember now exactly what it was, but I think it was his general idea was to play this idea of bishop e7 and h5
But what happens if they went, let's say they went h3 there, and if you go h4, they just go g4. What's that kind of position like? Is it not that good for black?
Like,
Not that good for white?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know in theory the idea is right. If they go H3, then the weakening G3 and F4 is going to be a bit less desirable, right? In principle, that's like supposed to be
Mm.
the ideas. I'm
And
not
if,
sure if you
yeah, sorry,
H4
yeah.
there.
Okay, so he went knight a3, just allowed it, which I must admit I would be a
Yeah, which
little
I thought
bit,
was quite risky. Yeah.
yeah, I would be a little bit concerned about just allowing you to open the h file.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, just go for it.
So what happens
And
if you
again, I
take with the
was.
f pawn there rather than like it seems a bit
Yeah, I
compliant.
mean
Take
that seems like a much more human approach, right? Less risky.
Yeah, I mean it seems very strange to me to just take with the h pawn there, to be honest. But fair play, like he's got some balls, you know.
No, I mean, I don't know whether it was just he was just didn't respect me at all, or whether he genuinely believed in the position or what. He
How long was
felt
he taking on these decisions?
a reasonable amount of time. It wasn't like he was blitzing out the moves or anything.
Right. Okay.
But I can't, to be honest, I can't remember exactly how long he took on this. I guess here I was just going to play maybe something like going for bishop e7, queen d7, try and castle queenside or something. Might have been
Well,
one way
isn't
of
there a
playing.
threat on the e5 pawn, right?
Sorry, I mean, after maybe f6 first. Do I have to play first or queen c7?
Yeah, I mean queen c7 feels okay for you. Unless there's some
Seems quite natural.
weird tactic, which I don't really believe that there is.
Oh, there's some kind of knight takes and bishop f4 or something.
No, I don't think that works, so just go f6.
Yeah, yeah. But this definitely seems more of a game than what he played.
Yeah, maybe c3 here, c3 and just play, maybe c3 with the idea of bishop d2 and b4 or something, bishop d2 rook c1 or yeah, I mean I'm not sure if who I would rather play here, whether it be white or black. Because white seems to
Yeah,
have a
sure. I mean,
sorry, yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
go.
No, white seems to have a bit of an initiative. So yeah, so
Sure.
I
I mean,
mean,
my point was the general philosophy rather than saying objectively
mm.
this
No,
is
but
an
the computer
advantage.
would probably think black's fine here. So yeah, that's ultimately. I mean, that's one of the things about computer preparation. I think people can become too obsessed with computer preparation, but at the same time,
Sure.
it can help in a sense that you can confirm your belief that your position is fundamentally okay. If the computer says that you're not, you might look at it and be a little bit concerned, but actually the computer says no, you're doing quite well here. So I don't know. Maybe we can check with the engine later, but
Sure.
Queen, yeah. So he took with a pawn,
Yeah.
right? He
So
took with the
H
H pawn.
queen c7. And here I played a move. I haven't checked this with the computer. I don't think it's the best move, but I decided to go for the kind of the bind with g5. Just try and really fight him. Might have
Se-
been some
Seems
sounder
reasonable. Seems
white way to
reasonable to
play, but
me. F4 is F4 a move?
good question. Let's have a look. I guess I've got to take, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't make my play doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
No, just wondering, can I play? Does Bishop E6 make any sense here? And just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it looks okay for you actually. Still looks fine.
and I remember one idea at the time. I haven't played this in quite a while, but I remember one idea was surprisingly how much the computer was quite happy just to chop on C4 in a lot of positions
Yeah,
and then just
yeah.
base.
Just like simplicity, just likes to get to another position that it thinks is okay, right? Because
Yeah,
F5 you take,
yeah,
and then you castle and you go knight f6 quickly, and then you just play chess,
yeah. Seems
and
very
probably
reasonable,
you're
right?
doing well. You take, you go knight f6, you bring the rook to g8, and
Let's,
yeah, I mean, you just castle, just castles. He's got no threats, so he
yeah,
might as well just castle, and
yeah. It's not an
then.
easy position to fight, right? At all.
Yeah, maybe f6 actually. Maybe you should have gone knight f6 last move, objectively. Maybe he goes f6 and sacks a pawn. So maybe just go knight f6 and then castle,
Sure.
and then go rook g8, and then he doesn't really have any great play, you know. And in fact, his king
Yeah.
is just going to be in the firing line because of my weakening F4 move. I don't really care about other people's games, so I'm going to just weaken their king. You know, like it's your game, mate. It was your mess up. I'm just going to go F4 and mate you even quicker than you got mated in the game. So C3, probably not a terrible move, yeah.
Cool. So then we went with this complication here.
Oh wow, wow.
I think it's gone quite badly for him now. Feels like with the queen being able to slide across.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually had a game like this online earlier where I kind of I was trying to mate him on H2. I think I did win that game actually. And
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, yeah.
yeah, go on.
No, I'm just going to say that's what you want to do when you play chess. We talk about all these different strategies and so on, and pawn structures. Like Nigel Short's famous quote was, people talk a lot about pawn structures, but at the end of the day, there's not much you can do if they checkmate you. So,
I mean, yeah, he hasn't played it
checkmate.
very well, sure, but I still think the point stands like you got to try and be aggressive, and sometimes even someone this strong can mess up.
Can you go knight f3 here? Can you go knight f3?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Even though that probably drops the d
So just
pawn.
G4?
No, g4 drops the queen.
Oh, sorry. Bloody hell.
I can tell you have done a great analysis of this game. You've spent many hours studying this. Maybe Queen H5 he was concerned about, which preparing G4, right?
Yeah, yeah. That seems.
Yeah, Queen H5. It's kind of your position's kind of ugly because but it's effective. It's like ugly chess, but it works, right? Now,
Yeah,
but
I think that pretty much describes my style.
maybe you
Only it
could
doesn't work
go.
all the time.
Yeah, but it's very, very dangerous for him. The idea G4, Knight H4, Bishop H4, GH4, Queen H4, Rook E1, Queen H2, King F1. There's going to be a Rook D8, and then he's going to smash through on D3. So unless he's got something really good here, he's in trouble. I mean, he could go G4 maybe, and when you take on E5, but it's just hard to believe. Maybe that is some kind of defense, but like if he goes Rook E1, G4, Knight H4, Bishop H4, GH4, Queen H4, Rook C1. And then if Queen H2, King F1, Rook D8, Rook C3. Maybe he's clinging on, but it's just really hard to believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, it looks grim, right?
It looks, I mean,
Um,
even Knight F6, maybe Knight F6, Bishop C5, Knight H5 with a crushing threat. Oh, but hang on, there is some problem with the G pawn, maybe. Probably missing a lot of stuff here. Maybe even a move like Rook H3 is possible. Rook H3, take, and then you got this attack on the light squares. Knight H5, Queen G4, Knight F4 is also playable. Yeah, Knight H5. Try Knight H5, Queen G4, and Knight F4. Now Queen H1 isn't a threat because he's got Queen G1 at the end, but there's threats are taken on D3.
it's a good job you said that before I suggested the brilliancy.
Yeah, it doesn't look good for. There's even ideas like B6, Bishop moves, Bishop C8. Oh no, but then Rook C8, maybe.
What does White even play here that hangs on?
It looks lost. It looks lost.
Yeah.
So F3 he tried, right? Which obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, like you say, but it's it doesn't matter how strong they are if you're checkmating them. And one of you probably read this book yourself, Tristan, but one of the books I read a lot when I was younger was Chess for Tigers by Simon Webb.
Yes, that's one of the books I actually brought to Vietnam with me for sentimental reasons because my dad got it me when I
Mm.
was a little kid. Love
And
that
there's
book.
some lovely little illustrations in there as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
How to
believe
trap a
it.
heifer.
I believe Simon Webb was also a correspondence player, so I think he didn't get he. I think he was an IM over the board, but he got a correspondence GM title. But he was like he had a son who was Dutch, right? And he got
I know the
murdered.
story.
He got killed by his son because his son was suffering from schizophrenia, and then his son crashed a car. So it's quite a tragic story. But he wrote this great book for Chess for Tigers, one of my favorite books when I was younger. And there was all these sort of like advice in it, like how to swindle your opponent. And he would categorize. So you know, he'd have this theory that if people were in time trouble, you'd rattle out moves quickly. Do you know what I mean? You'd have like a sequence of moves, and you just bash them out, boom, 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 boom. Do you know what I mean? Which would
Yeah, yeah,
unsettle
I
them.
remember that. Yeah.
And what do you other advice? I think he gives a game against Wolfgang Ullmann or something like that, where Wolfgang Ullmann beat him, and he was just showing like how this is how. Um,
Oh, was that? Oh, no, no, I'm thinking of another game. Yeah, go on.
so yeah, but this is how like better players beat weaker players is they win technically, and they're
There was
stronger
a
overall.
Yeah, there was another example where he went into some kind of hedgehog position, which he really regretted because like the other opponent was much more experienced, and even with the space advantage, whatever, it's just like, well, he just didn't feel comfortable with it, and he was talking about how you just got to stick to what you know and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he said like the best way to beat stronger players is like the heifer lumps, right? Is you drag them into the swamp. And
Yes.
I felt that the other day because I was playing an ex-student of mine called Cameron Davis, who's like 89, and I mentioned this game on my channel. And I went into a very sharp variation, and I later regretted it because it was like, if I'd have played some quiet, boring system, I probably would have won the game easy. No disrespect to Cameron, because just I would have kept the game going, and at some point I probably would have outplayed him. Because
That's my philosophy against juniors, just bore them to death.
yeah. So I think that's fair enough. Anyway, let's have a. So I'm waffling again. I should enter the British waffling championships, right? I'll be like massive. I'll be like 3,000 elo. Yeah.
Yeah, you can have the waffle championships, I can have the blunder championships.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's just
Right. Yeah, because I always remember because we shared a flat once. I always remember you were quite a dangerous attacking player. Like, like in certain positions I didn't want to play against you, like where you felt I could tell that you felt comfortable and that you were just sort of like playing on autopilot. So he couldn't take the pawn. Why couldn't he have taken the pawn? Just king b8 or something, or just knight f6, or there was a tactical problem.
I mean, they just wanted to have the D file open was
D
the main
file,
reason.
yeah,
Just
yeah. That's good instincts then, right? Yeah, it
that.
just looks very dangerous for white, yeah.
And also just not losing this because I mean bishop takes c5 is an issue, right? So I thought why not just block the
Mm,
c file and then he doesn't
mm,
have any
absolutely, yeah.
counterplay coming in. Yeah, and I think now it's just abysmal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's not much to that was it.
Okay, okay, let's just look at one more game, Tristan, because we don't want to like get too bogged down in chess, because people tend to turn off when you start showing them actual chess positions. So you don't talk about chess drama.
Sure, sure. Okay, well maybe I mentioned that game against Neverov, so
You're
that's
right,
probably
right,
my
right.
win. Again, good. I mean, this was some interesting prep. Although I
Mm.
hadn't, it's interesting
Let
because
me
he's
just get some
actually.
water. I'll just get some water, Tristan. I'm
Sure,
getting
sure.
thirsty again, mate. Sorry, carry on, Tristan. Sorry, mate. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so this was the first round of the European Championships, and it's the
Mm.
first time I'd ever played a huge tournament like this. So I was kind of like really in the moment, really enjoying myself, just getting the chance. There was like Ivan Chuck and Gelfand and players, and I'd never seen before, so I was
I've never played
quite
a
worked.
European individual championships. I was due to play in Ohrid in Macedonia in 2001, I believe it was, Space Odyssey. And but unfortunately, my fear of flying overcame me. So I think I actually didn't get either stay. I think I stayed in the house. I never even left for the airport. And there was several episodes like this, which is sad, really, that tragedy of my chess career that I didn't quite fulfill my potential in many ways because although later on, like around about mid 2000s, I started flying again, but then I stopped flying for 17 years. But yeah, that was in Macedonia, yeah, 2001. So I could have
I'd
been.
recommend anyone. It's such an experience getting to play in a tournament
They're
like
getting
this.
stronger and stronger now. Like when you look at the fields for these tournaments, the European Championships, and that's actually
I
another.
don't, I just find it really inspiring, like
That's
just
an
getting that kind of
yeah.
atmosphere.
That's another question for you. Like, let's say you were playing against, or I was playing against somebody. Let's say I'm playing against a 2500 in round four of the European Championships. How many hours would you recommend I do on preparation before the game?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think nowadays, personally, I'd be on like the stricter side of like trying to do as little as possible and staying fresher at the board. But it
Mm.
really depends on the opponent. Like I think with if you're playing someone younger who's got like a wide repertoire, then unfortunately you've just got to knuckle down and work quite hard, right? Otherwise, you're just gonna be in big trouble right from the start.
Yeah, I remember watching an interview with Edis. Is it Edis Gurel? Because a lot of these Turkish guys are really, really good, right? There's Edric Gomas who plays a lot online, and this Gurel's very, very good at 1 minute as well. I've seen him play online blitz. He's very, very fast, like insanely fast. And he was saying he spends typically 4 to 5 hours. So to interview him at the Olympiad, he says he spends 4 to 5 hours before the game preparing for the game.
Yep.
And I'm like,
I think if you're younger, then fine, you can handle that. But
he's younger and he's ambitious. He wants to be one of the best players in the world, right?
sure.
But I think when you get older, you kind of like, like I'll give you an example. When I played that Hungary tournament, I knew the parents beforehand, and I didn't even want to prepare for that. Like I couldn't even bother to prepare because there was no prize money. And
Yeah.
let's have a look at this game then,
So I
Tristan.
was just going to show, actually, while you mentioned that, I wanted to show just very quickly a really ba embarrassing example of mine, just to show what you were talking about. Because I came back from, I hadn't played over the board in almost 2 years. And then I was really lucky that I got to play on board one in Division One of the 4 NCL. And I had to play like Jonathan Parker,
Mm.
another guy who's like 2400, and then this Turkish guy, Eri Kilic. It's a very like up and coming, like
So
18-year-old
again,
player. Just
these Turkish guys, I was chatting to, I think I mentioned to you before that a lot of these Indian kids, they're doing like 10 hours a day. And I think
yeah.
it's probably true. These Turk, like they have this attitude. Look, we're doing chess. There's no doubt in their mind. You always feel like English players are like, oh, maybe I should get another career. The Turkish, like, they're getting backed by the government a lot of time. They're getting or at least flights and accommodation paid for. Same with the Indians, and it could potentially change their lives and change their families' lives if they have success because they get to travel around the world and get to play chess. And they're very ambitious to do well. So they're putting in as many hours as they can. Whereas in England, I think there's very few examples where we're doing that. So we need to close the gap and become more obsessional in a way. Sadly, that's what you got to do to be good at chess. But yeah, carry on. Let's have a look at this game quickly then,
Just the same.
Tristan.
So like I obviously he's like 24/70. So I was kind of having a meltdown before the game, trying to prepare everything I possibly could. I must have done about 3 hours of preparation.
Wow.
Um,
Do you not
and I
just
thought I
go,
was,
this guy's too good, I can't be bothered to prepare?
I mean, I felt like I've got this opportunity. I can't just like, I haven't been playing in a while. It's like a great opportunity to get to play someone that strong.
This guy beat
But
Keith the same weekend.
yeah, yeah,
Keith very rarely loses.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
But it
have
was
a
a
look.
bad.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, carry on, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I really went too far with like my prep. Like I was literally just until a few minutes before the game, I was stressing out about everything. I was just trying to look at so many lines that I just completely burnt out before the game even happened. So I think for most, say, let's adults or club players, I really don't recommend doing this, no matter who the opponent is, how strong they are. I just don't think it's worth it now. I'd be much stricter with myself. Maybe stick to like an hour, hour and a half, something like that for your
You
average
know, one of the
person,
things
unless
I've
you're
noticed recently, when I've messed up, it's not due to preparation. It's rarely due to preparation. Sometimes it is, but rarely. When I look at back at the games where I've dropped points recently, where I probably shouldn't have dropped points, it's more due to my attitude. My attitude at the board is bad. I play too quickly at times. When you have a good frame of mind, the weird thing when I played that Hungary tournament, the only game I won was the game where I did zero preparation for. Because the problem is when you
This is
prepare, yeah. So I played this guy who was about 24, 40, I think, German player. Had a Switzerland t-shirt on. And this was after I'd lost the first two games. And I was like, there's no pressure on me. I don't care anymore. And I just sat there and I just played chess. And, I think that's one of the things, it's great to prepare. But honestly, I think the best advice is actually to do the preparation at home before the tournament, or do most of the preparation at home before the tournament.
exactly.
And at the tournament, but the reality is, Tristan, I say that, but the reality is most people don't do that preparation. So when you're at the tournament, you're confronted with a direct opponent. That's when you will be motivated to do the preparation. But
Yeah.
honestly, at our tournament in Hungary, the internet was bad. Like, in the rooms, it was very intermittent, so I couldn't really prepare properly anyway. And then at some point, so I can't be bothered to prepare. I'm just going to turn up, and it's more about your frame of mind at the board, honestly.
Sure.
Like you say, you tie yourself up. Go out. What I do now, actually, even if I've got a morning game at the 4 NCL, I've got morning games, say, at 11. Typically, the Sunday morning game is 11 a.m. Or even the Saturday morning game is 2. I'll go out for a long walk, like 10K steps before the game, because that will freshen me up. I played a good game the other day where I played Peter Wells in the morning, and I probably walked about 7K, 8K before the game. And it helped me for
Yeah,
the
it's a good
game.
idea.
I just wasn't as stressed as I would have been. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, it was like my brain just had a meltdown. Just quickly show the opening. So I really carefully prepared this line of the short variation in the Caro-Kann. And then so C takes knight takes D4, knight 7, C4,
this is the main
knight
line. Is
B6,
it, is this the main line then, right?
yeah. Yeah, so just to show there's a slightly different line um
Right.
where they go instead of C4, is it I'm trying to think castles, knight BC6,
Yeah.
bishop B5, A6, like this, take, C4, and now Queen D7.
Mm, mm.
Um, and I'd been going through all these different. I'd never played this variation before, but I'd been going through all the variations, and I felt really confident that I knew them. But then when I got to the board, it was like really incredible to me. Like I'd been doing like testing my memory before the game, and then suddenly it was like just felt like it dropped away.
I
And then
think,
I bashed out.
yeah, sorry, we'll come back to that. But
Just say I
what I
bashed out
was,
these moves,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, what I was going
and
to
I
say
played this
was,
seven move.
sorry, mate, can I just interrupt for a second? It's like
Sure,
question
sure.
time when we're on. We're all like talking over each other, right? But now, what I was going to say was, it's a very good point when you say, well, firstly, I think when you're older, it's harder to memorize all this stuff. And I find that, I think it's difficult anyway. I think without practical experience, like when you can do all the study you want at home, but until you actually play that position over the board, it's very, very hard. And play it
So
several times, not just online. You play it online, you forget about the game. But when you play it, it's like, I'll give you an example. Like if you do like a pub
muscle memory.
quiz, yeah, if you do a pub quiz and you get a question and you lose because of that question that you got wrong, that question will stick in your mind, because you've got a specific sort of like practical experience. So yeah, maybe this is an example, you could beat yourself up about it, but honestly, it's more about, yeah, getting a feel for the opening. So, okay, so he took on D5 or what he took on D5 or...
No, but I mean, the point is, I bashed out Queen D7 almost instantly. Like it was so stupid. I was
Oh my
convinced in my mind
God.
beating the Queen D7 move, and I realized it's just a losing move as soon as I played it. I
You
just
were
wanted to punch myself in the
you were
face. I was so
probably wound up before the game.
yeah, but and I was just hallucinating as well. I was convinced I was
Oh,
playing the other line,
because there was a
and that
Queen
Queen D.
D7 where they take on C6, you got the moves mixed up.
Yeah, and I was just playing
Yeah.
so quickly. I was so like I should have just. It's unforgivable though, even not knowing the theory. If I just spent a few like just taking a few deep breaths before playing it and just check. Just another thing, no matter how confident you are with your theory, you shouldn't bash it out. Just a classic mistake.
I was
It was
saying
just
this.
so stupid.
I was saying this the other day. Like your challenge when you're a chess player, your challenge is to find the best version of yourself, right? And
Yeah.
what's the best version of yourself? Like the best version of Tristan is like calm. He's sitting there. He's giving himself the best possible chance. Now it might not be enough because the guy is a very strong player, right? But but
Cool.
what it really you really hate is when you don't even give yourself a chance. You know, and I would feel the same way. I'd be like, look, this is not the best version of myself. I've just played Queen D7, which is like a patzer move, right? And I've
Yeah,
lost
it
immediately.
really is.
But it's a very difficult position. This whole line where they go E5, it can get very, very sharp. I remember preparing a line against Harry Grieve at Guernsey a couple of years ago. And it was a huge amount of theory. I think Amit's had a game in that line as well that I was particularly thinking of. It was one line where Black takes on B2, right? And
Oh yeah,
there's
yeah, the very line. Yeah, I mean, I won't touch that with a barge pole.
but the reason I
Let's put it
played that
that way.
line because I keep getting bashed up by Harry Grieve in Open Sicilians. So I thought, well, let's try the Caro. I had all morning to prepare, because the games didn't start till like maybe even late afternoon. So I had a lot of time to prepare, and it kind of worked in my favor because at some point he, respected my prep and then offered me a draw, and given my score against Harry, that was a good result.
Yeah, I mean, he's
Um,
an incredibly bad player, right? So
he's
it's
very strong in preparation, I think. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Carrot. So
yeah, that
basically,
was
we're
just
losing after this, right?
yeah. There's no. I mean, I didn't. I mean, it's
But what
just
should you play
ridiculous.
instead of Queen D7 again, Tristan? What's the move
Oh,
instead
I
of
should take on D4.
right? And this reminds me of a Shirov game. This is
Yes,
like a
there's a Shirov game where he lost to Anand. No, wait, sorry, there was Topalov Anand, but there was a Shirov game
oh yeah,
in
the
this whole.
beginning. Yeah, yeah.
It's like a
It's in his
model
book. It's
game.
in his book. Far on board, I think. Maybe,
One
or it
second.
rings a bell. It rings a bell. This is old, like 19, even it goes back to 1990s theory, it may be theory, or 2000 at least.
Yeah, for sure. There was definitely a game of. There was definitely a there was a nice. Yeah, there's a few games of Anand's. Oh, it's weird, not quite here, but yeah, I've definitely seen a game that he won that was very nice in this, where White just ended up a bit overextended with the pawn on E5.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. When you look at the top players, they're spending like hours and hours. They don't just turn up at the board, It just doesn't happen, A lot of people like Magnus, they like to give the impression they're so talented. Don't get me wrong, he is incredibly talented, but he also is very obsessive about chess. He wouldn't have become world number one if
Yeah,
he
I mean, even
if
when he's playing these kind of bullshit openings, he's actually put some thought into how he's going to handle it or something.
yeah, yeah. I
Like some
mean,
dodgy stuff. So
yeah, it's just he can play so many different positions because I think he has studied a lot as well. It's not just raw talent.
did
We
you hear
don't
this thing about the number generator that he uses?
about a what? Oh, the
So it's
dice.
really funny that yeah, so he was saying nowadays because he just hates feeling stressed about prep. They literally he'll set up like a number generator, random number generator on his phone to decide what opening he's going to play sometimes, just to take all the stress.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea
Yeah,
actually. A lot of it's
yeah.
psychological.
If you've got a versatile enough style, sure.
But that's
But
coming back to what I was saying about when I played against that German guy because I lost the first two games. I actually didn't feel any pressure. So I went into the game and I was like, did no prep, and I'm happy to just play chess. And I think so when you decide that you are going to prepare, because you can only take that just that method. I think a lot of my strength has been based on my preparation. I think if I'm
sure,
honest, you know, um, but we used to have computers back in the day, Tristan. We used to have chess space, and we didn't really use engines, right?
sure,
Uh, and I didn't use engines to prep. So people have this theory that engines really help you a lot, but the reality is I was 2400 back then. This is going back to 1990s. I'm still 2400. So, probably my strength is based on just the fact that that's my strength. I'm probably about a 2400 type player, right? or I was maybe 2,500 at some point, but not anymore because of rate deflation. In fact, I've got a bit older. Anyway, let's have a look at it again. I'm waffling. I'm still prepping for the World
No
Waffling
worries.
Championship. Let's have a look at this Neverov
So,
game.
so this was interesting because, at the time, the Sämisch was like my favorite opening, but he's also a Sämisch player with white,
Samish,
and we're both
Samish.
King
I was Samish, right?
Sämisch, yeah,
Hmm.
both King's Indian players as well. So it's quite interesting. But a lot of this, I think, until move 17 was actually theory, but it wasn't actually my prep at the time. But it was like what you're saying. I'd done loads of prep over like a couple of years on this, and it kind of sunk in some of the key ideas, and I managed to reconstruct a lot of it over the board.
Right, exactly.
Uh, Again, it was an example of like I just didn't want to respect him. It's kind of like I felt it was a bit cheeky playing his own opening against him when he's a Samish expert, and I'm just gonna just try and smash him off the board, even
Oh,
though I
okay.
know
So
I
lack
shouldn't.
of
It's like,
respect is often a useful tool, right? Yeah.
yeah, I
Because
think so.
I think that's true that a lot of people, when you speak to them, you say, why don't you play the Open Sicilian as white? And I say, oh, I'm afraid of their prep. I'm like afraid of. So you already fear. You've already got that fear.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just look how everyone gets psyched out by Carlson, right? It's all a lot of psychological damage that people do to themselves.
Is
Okay, that's an extreme example, but you
Yeah.
think it
A lot of them got
applies across the.
scar tissue against him. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's have a look at the game, mate. Yeah. So C5 D5.
So I played this knight G2 move, which is kind of the more modern version instead of bishop E3. So
Yeah.
you
I've
can hang
also
back to bishop G
I've
in
also played Bishop
one
Bishop
tempo.
G5 there. Bishop G5. I even had a game against like in that line earlier online. I can't remember how the game finished, but yeah.
So I think this is definitely one of the best lines for black. Yeah, and here we see the idea that I go straight to G5.
Right,
So
right.
just trying to create an annoying pin.
Mm.
Um, and then he played Queen E8.
Yeah,
And
that's
this is where I had
interesting.
to start reconstructing stuff in my head. I had some vague ideas, and it turns out I managed to kind of remember, but I didn't really know at the time whether I was getting it spot on or not. So this is just gaining a tempo. So the queen comes forwards, and then moving the knight back will make sense. I mean, the thing I liked about, I mean, what attracted me to this opening was that I remember, the Samish always had this reputation of being a very caveman opening. But
Mm.
then I saw some games of, say, Abhijit Gupta and stuff like that, where he's playing it much more positionally and like showing actually, you can have this solid pawn chain and end up playing for weaknesses on the queen side and things like that. And I thought it's a
Mm.
really
Mm.
interesting opening. And then this was where I had a big think because I kind of had some memory of like what the thematic move was here, which was Bishop C1. But it took me a
Right.
while to convince myself because I was like, oh, if I've got this wrong, then I'm just going to feel like a total idiot.
Yeah, I think this comes back to study because I play this line a lot online or similar lines, but I don't think I've ever really studied it in any detail. I've never, studied a chessable course on it and so on. And I seem to get good positions, but then collapse. So I think that comes down to, I was just mentioning something the other day to somebody that, one of the books I studied a lot when I was younger was Winning with a Night Off by Danny King. So certain positions in a Night Off I understand quite well. Like some of the quieter lines for Bishop E2, where they go E5 and stuff like that. But the structure probably understand quite well. Probably played almost a super grandmaster strength, right? But the problem is that that was only one book that I studied. If I'd have studied several opening books when I was younger, like a book on the Sämisch or whatever, to that level, quite possibly I might have become a super grandma. I might have, I would have probably broken 2,600 because there's, a lot of it is just deep knowledge of openings. Botvinnik, for example, he was one of the first sort of like really serious people who would do preparation and so on. Mikhail
Sure.
Botvinnik, former world chess champion, Soviet grandmaster. Um, and he would not just study the opening, but he would also study the resulting middle games. So I
Yes,
think
I think that's really important. I
very
mean, I
important point
noticed
here.
this. One of the companies I really like, Modern Chess, they do these kind of courses where they actually have a whole section on like thematic endgames in that opening and stuff like that, which I found really useful. That's helped me a lot
Mm.
with some stuff. So it's kind of like, I mean, I know it's like I try and explain to students who get obsessed with theory. It's like I tell them, imagine you're a pilot, you're learning to be a pilot, and you want to fly to America, but you haven't looked at a map where America is. And that's kind of the same as if you're just trying to play an opening and you have no idea about the middle games or the end games that are going to result from it, right?
I'll talk about pilot. I kept reading about all these crashes. Like I'm obsessed with the Air India crash, and also the there's. Have you heard of Air France for flight 442? It's what
I'm not sure the number. I might know if you
it's one
said it more deep.
where they're flying back from Rio de Janeiro back to Paris, and what happened was that the plane um it starts to ice up, so that turns off the speed gauge, right? So the pilots then overreact to that. One of the pilots starts over frosting you know, the plane, and basically he starts, too high an angle of attack, if you know this kind of jargon. And because of that, the plane starts to lose thrust eventually because it's already at like 39,000 feet, 37,000 feet, or whatever it is. And, at that speed, at that height, you can't really like start going up, right? You're only going to come down. So eventually, what happened is the plane went into stall and everybody on the plane died. I'm not sure exactly why I'm telling you this story, but it
Might explain
shows.
your fear of flying.
But where I would explain where there's an analogy to chess is what they said about that was because so much of flying is based on you basically the pilot is not really doing the flying, it's the computers that's doing the flying now. You get in the plane and maybe the pilot's doing like 2 or 3 minutes of flying, actual flying. Most of it's done by the computer. Now there's the same thing with preparation. Like how much do you basically just read off the engine lines? And I think you really got to think your way through the position because often like I'll prepare these lines and I'll prepare these engine lines and I'm gonna spend like ages. It comes a little bit back to what you're saying about this Turkish guy, right? Or what the game you had against Turkish guy. Prepare these lines, like these engine lines, and then you get into the board, and then you confront this position. You go, well, look, the engine is telling you to play this because the engine is playing the 3600 level, right? 3600 versus 3600 from both sides. But when you're sat on a board versus a human opponent, it's completely different because they're looking at it in a common sense way. So I think that's something that you have to be very wary of when you're
Yeah, I mean that's
preparing.
definitely something I'm really. I mean, I've been working with engines for a long time and like discussing this a lot with Amit and other players, and it's definitely something I won't play an engine line if I just think I just can't understand it at all. I think that's definitely some good advice to follow. Like, just be
Yeah.
honest with yourself. Really could really understand why the engine is suggesting a move. And if it's like dependent on
Mm.
some ridiculous long line and loads of accurate play, then just don't go near it.
There's a very good podcast I recommend watching it actually. It's with Kazim Janov, who's like a former FIDE world champion. I think he won the FIDE world champion something like Triple E 2006 or something like this.
Yeah,
Going
yeah,
maybe even earlier than that actually. Anyway, he was saying that computers now are so strong he doesn't really even understand them. Like, you basically say,
yeah.
like before you would question what the computer's saying. Now you never question. You say, sure, sure. I don't understand it, but I'm sure you're right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a different, it's like a different species almost. Anyway, so you got in
Yeah.
this thematic pawn break with F4, so that was nice. So B5, you
Yeah, so
went,
that's obviously why I played Bishop C1, and I knew this idea quite well. I'd had a few games or something like this.
yeah, not, yeah, I love playing this pawn sack, like E5.
Yeah, so even here, I think the computer was saying something like if he doesn't play DE and just tries to keep the tension, he's actually doing okay. But it's just not a human position, I think, to
Maybe even
play with black,
F5
whereas
as
it's
a
very
move.
white.
F5 as a move, allow E6. Maybe that's too much, but some move like rook E8 or something like that, right? Or knight H6
Yeah,
maybe. Knight H6 maybe.
knight h6, I think might have been the move the computer suggested, actually,
But a
if I remember
human would
correctly.
be worried about E6. Humans like jump to conclusion, go
Sure.
E6, FE, bishop G6, too messy.
Trying to resolve the tension somehow, right? It's very not. I mean, this
Something
is why I
like
chose this. I felt like it's a very very comfortable to play with white.
Someone like Neville, he's probably getting on a bit now. Like when I played him, he wasn't like the youngest even then, right? And he was quite jittery. So nice guy though. Queenie
Yeah.
A, good player, very strong player.
And I
F5.
mean, I
This
could just play all this on autopilot. It's just I've seen enough games with this.
this is what Dvoretsky called the sweeper sealer. It was like a football term that you'd play D6 and then you would eventually you go E5 and when they take you eventually go F5.
Yep. Yeah. And I think Kasparov had a famous game, that kind of theme as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I just went very naturally from here.
Yeah, this looks
Not a lot
dangerous. This looks
went
dangerous.
downhill for just, I mean, really like kind of no-brain chess, right? I mean, just playing very kind of intuitively, just bringing my pieces in.
Hmm.
It's not a huge amount to calculate.
Yeah, this is an impressive game, I must admit. This is like, if I played this game, I'll be very
Right.
proud of it. I think anybody would.
Yeah, that's a game I'm happiest with for sure. Amit hates how much I go on about this game. I wind him up a lot about it every time. Oh, I'm just like, oh, do you remember that game I had against Neverov?
Again, like it's position you understand, right? It's so important that you
Yep,
understand. That's what I was saying about the top players. It's not necessarily you know, they do so much work and everything, but it's also the fact that they just understand more positions, probably because of that work that they've done. And
for sure.
but yeah, there's a few questions I wrote down actually, Tristan. That I wanted to ask you, like I wanted to
It's
talk about.
very much.
I wrote
But
these down earlier, mate, in preparation for this video, and I said, okay, right. So one of the things I said was, I don't know if you agree with this. I said, like, let's for example the King's Indian, right? In my opinion, it's not a bad opening. If the top engine played it against any human, it would win more or less every game. The reason why people are often reluctant to play openings like that are because you're giving your opponent space. There's often a case where you get wiped out on the queen side very quickly without getting any play on the king side. So, in my opinion, I think one of the things that computers have shown us is that pretty much any opening is playable. You know,
yep,
bec- and the other thing I would say is what I don't understand is people play the same stuff over and over again. And
absolutely.
I feel that chess should be an enjoyable game. And I think it's boring just to play the same stuff over and over again. Having said that, that's the great argument because I was playing Jeremy Menadue the other day, and Jeremy is like a player probably used to be about 2200, but now because of deflation, he's older and he's playing against all these underrated juniors. He's now dropped to 1945 FIDE, right? I was shocked
Yeah,
how low it was, right? Obviously he's older as well, right? He's probably like 60s
sure.
now. But he said to me after the game that, I didn't even really prepare because you played so many different openings. So I played a Benko against him, which I've rarely played, right? Because I thought, Benko is something where I remember reading about Halifman. He said one of the reasons he sort of like he was in this kind of like stuck in this rut where he couldn't beat 2400s and in opens he was drawing too many games with black against 2300s, 2400s. So he started playing much sharper and started Benko, and that's when he started to get much better results.
That's I think that's a really good example of what you're talking about how engines have kind of given the wrong impression to people. Like, everyone goes on in, if you read loads of books, they'll tell you, oh, how the engines have bust the Benko or it's in big trouble, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I really don't care. Like, I would never like go down the lines where you just grab all the pawns, like taking on A6 and trying to play the main line in the Benko with white. I would just hate playing it. I don't care what the
Mhm.
computer eval
Yeah,
is.
okay,
I just
that's
feel like
fair.
that's way more comfortable for black,
Mm,
especially when in your situation where you're playing someone lower rated, putting pressure on with that kind of position. It's
yeah,
not enjoyable.
okay. Okay, so what else have I written down in my waffling notes? Um, yeah, so the King's Indian, obviously, that's a reasonable opening. I mean, we could discuss this for like hours.
Absolutely.
That's um, But yeah, I mean, there is obviously there's two approaches in a way. There's like the approach where you said Magnus will play a lot of different stuff. I think Jubov, it was another very good podcast that I watched. Have you seen this podcast with Jubov?
I've seen some of it. I know the one you mean. Where
Yes.
I remember, because I remember talking about how you can just throw away all the analysis before, I don't know, it was like 2017, 2019, because the engines have just improved so much.
Yeah, he was saying that obviously I don't know how old he is. He's probably like early 30s now, maybe, or I'm not sure, like
Late
late
20s?
late
I'm not
20s,
sure,
something like
yeah.
that. But he was saying that, he does X amount of work. He does a lot of hours. So I was expecting him to say, yeah, I study all sorts of different things. I study end games. You often get this quote online where people go, oh, amateurs spend too much time studying openings and, they should be studying other facets of the game. Well, I don't agree with that. I think you should study openings because it's the most important thing. If you can't get out of the opening
Yeah, I
phase,
think I disagree with both extremes. Like, I don't agree with, say, the kind of there almost seems to be kind of like a memorization cult, like this
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing of like, oh, learning these openings to such a high degree on Chessable, just memorizing everything to move 20 or whatever.
Mm,
But also, I don't agree with, say, some of the older school, like, oh, people are spending way too much time. The reality is, yeah, you do have to spend some time on openings.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I think there's a balance to be struck.
But it's interesting what he said in that because he said that he may be spending like 6 hours a day, but the problem is that people like Prague and Erigaisi are spending 10
They're
hours
spending
a
like
day,
10 hours a day. Yeah,
which is probably true. And there's probably a lot of people in India now. That's the impression I get that are spending that that
yeah.
that, that amount of hours, or at least they're claiming to, because
Well, it's
sometimes
showing in the results, right? So,
it shows
and
in
their
their
knowledge.
results, hard work pays off, but also, I think sometimes they claim that just to frighten people, to intimidate people, because if you think that guy's spending 10 hours a day, that's quite frightening, right? And, I remember reading about Matthew Sadler when I was younger, and he was saying that he was spending 10 hours a day. And I thought, well, that's a freakish thing. Surely nobody else does that. But now I realize that to be a top level professional, so, I'm going to be doing the commentary at the British Championships, in
Yeah,
a few weeks' time. Obviously, Amy is probably a lively outsider for that. You'll be possibly helping him out there. But
for sure.
um, when you look at the top players there, people like obviously Michael Adams, currently one of the top C's, Viti Yugov, Gawain Jones. They're doing a lot of hours on chess. They're not just turning up.
Sure.
The reason they're the top players is also because they work harder than other people, right? You look at the lower tier of GMs, like people like myself. I would put in that category, Keith, Mark Hebden, Simon Williams, who aren't quite, like the top seeds. We don't work as hard. I think that's the biggest difference. Like Mark does at times, and he did get very close to 2600.
Sure.
He does work fairly hard, but I think in general we're not work. Partly the reason we're not at that level. We're talented. People, like someone like me and Simon, we're talented, but we just don't work that hard like these top guys, or at least
I
not
mean, I remember.
consistently enough.
Yeah, I remember reading about this in different subjects, like this myth of the genius. Of course, these people they've got an incredible talent, but also, yeah, no one is that good just without doing zero work.
Yeah,
That's kind of like this nice, like, idea we have of like, but, even with something like other endeavors, like poetry, writing, whatever, you actually read about these great figures and they were just putting in the hours, just spending
of
hours and
course,
hours
of
every day
course.
for years of
Yeah,
their
yeah,
lives.
yeah. It's like like talent is like an assimilation. Like like you look to be you seem to be talented, but it's mainly because you speak to this junior that's seems to be mega talented at the chess club, at the school chess club. But then when you speak to him, you say, "Oh, he's doing many hours a day on chess.com." So actually, that's why he's so much
I
there.
think there was something about Kasparov. I can't remember he was the one who said it or whether it was Dvoretsky said it about him, but that actually being able to work hard is a talent in itself.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people just can't do it. They just don't have it in them, right?
Yeah, it doesn't relate to pure chess talent probably, but it is a talent.
Just a
And
general talent. Yeah.
I would say that I was probably talented at chess compared to other things because I remember my dad taught me and I picked it up straight away. And that's very few things I pick up straight away. Most stuff I have to really think about, but chess I kind of got straight away. Unfortunately, I wish I hadn't now, but. Okay, so let's move on to what, and then we'll probably wrap this one up, mate. But it's been
Sure.
great. It's been very interesting and very informative. One of the things I wanted to say. So obviously, yeah, you've got this thing where you could play like lots of different openings, but you could also you have people like Mark Hebden who basically just play the same thing, and I think that's often like a better approach. I'll be honest with you, where you're basically just sticking with the same thing, where you
It's a
learn
big
it a
thing
lot
to
better.
say here. I think it really depends what level you're on. I mean, I think one of the mistakes, say, club players make is trying too hard to emulate grandmasters and stuff. And it's like, you just don't need to. Yeah, sure. If you're like a really ambitious junior upcoming, you're aiming for FIDE Master Plus, sure. Then you've got to be playing a lot of different, I think a lot of different things now. That's the reality of it because people are preparing so well. But I also think a lot of club players have kind of picked up these kind of bad habits when they just don't have the time or the energy, and it's just kind of it's not really going to help you that much
Mm.
unless you're just interested in trying other stuff. Then I would recommend sticking to something like Hebden's approach for sure.
Yeah, because when I played Hebden, and there's a lot of games where I'm impressed by how much he knows about a particular opening. You think like
Sure.
and but you don't often get that with other players because well they just play a lot of stuff. They don't know anything that well. They just that's a danger because I move around. So when Jeremy Menady said, "Yeah, you play a lot of stuff against D4," I was like, "Well, the problem is I'm not sure what to play because."
Yeah,
A lot of times I'm scared they might do this against that opening. So you could play, for example, I could play the Nimzo and then copy my repertoire on Michael Adams because he plays a Nimzo in the or has done in the past, or
sure.
Magnus Carlsen and someone like that, or play the King's Indian and base my repertoire on Bobby Fischer or Gary Kasparov or Mark Hebden or whoever, right? But yeah, I think that's an interesting point. But one last thing I wanted to say was stress was I think in general amateur players they generally don't analyze or annotate their games anyway. A lot of the amateur players that I've worked with. Would you say that's a fair statement, Tristan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the number one, let's say, problem. Is just, I mean, I know this very well myself, and I'm honest. There's something, not hate's a bit of a strong word, but I really don't like analyzing my games, at least at first. Once I actually get into it and I get going after like 15 minutes, half an hour, I find it enjoyable. But there's something, I don't know, it's like listening to the sound of your own voice or something like that, There's something about it, like having to face up to your mistakes and stuff like that. It's a lot more difficult. You're just facing like staring into the void rather than having something where you've got some theory or recommendations by a grandmaster, stuff like that. It can
Yeah,
be
yeah.
quite a real challenge to your ego, right?
I'll be honest. I
So,
think I had some tournaments last year. Well, I didn't have a laptop at that point, and it was really working well. So I only had the tablet. And to be honest, I probably played better there because I was like preparing these lines with a tablet, right? And it was kind of sinking in a bit more. And also, when I analyze the games afterwards, I would prepare with a tablet. I would look at them with a tablet without looking with the engine, right? But now it's just laziness. Now I've got the chess base. It's everything that's there served for you. You've got the chess base. It's just you know,
yep.
and
And also the compulsion to know what went wrong or right immediately after a game, I think is a big danger. Like I'm guilty of this myself, so I don't want to be like a hypocrite about it, but like, I really think it's a bad idea to instantly play through your game on an engine and find out, because then that just takes away a huge learning experience.
yeah, in general, I think yeah, that's absolutely true. And also, I think a lot of times when I'm analysing with engines, I just find it boring because it's just telling you the
Yeah.
answer, and the whole process of actually looking through a game and analysing it deeply and finding these amazing ideas. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you look at the game with the engine and it's fascinating. What it comes out with, but actually doing it yourself is a far more enjoyable experience, in my
There's
opinion.
Yeah, there was something else that I found. I think one of the most insightful things I heard, I can't remember his name, but there's an IM who works for Chess Dojo, and they did a little video on analyzing your own game. And he said one of the big
Kostya,
mistakes.
Kostya,
No, it wasn't Kostya. It's another David Proust. I
David
can't remember his
Pruce,
name.
maybe.
David,
Yeah, yeah. There's a
is it
David
Proust?
Pruce who's involved with that as
Yeah,
well,
some
and
anyway.
Jesse
But he was
Cry,
saying,
Jesse, but he's the GM. Jesse
I know, yeah,
Cry,
then
Jesse
sorry,
Cry,
it's
he's the
someone else.
GM. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, but anyway, so he was just saying one of the mistakes he thought a lot of amateurs make is that they try and analyze their game in the way that they've seen in, say, the old style Informator or something, where you're actually doing it for a magazine rather than looking at it just for yourself. And then they'd burn out doing all this analysis and explanation of stuff on all the
Mm,
different moves. And he was suggesting actually for say club level players, it'd be much better just to pick one or two really key moments and really analyze those most
absolutely.
valuable things in the game
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
yeah,
take some
absolutely.
lessons from that. Because you can just, I mean, taking the reality of like what most people have with their jobs, how much time they have for chess, you don't have time to sit down and do 4 hours analyzing one game. So
No,
I
absolutely.
think that's
Some
a
people
very
try too hard. You can try too hard,
yeah,
actually. And it's about
yeah.
using your time productively. But anyway, I think that was a very good discussion, Tristan. Hopefully, people enjoy that and hopefully they will contact me and want coaching. That's the only reason I do these videos. I need some money. Give me your money. Give me your money. But anyway, Tristan, thanks a lot for that. And yeah,
Enjoyed it.
please like and subscribe. I think you also offer some coaching as well, Tristan. I'll link your details down below. So if anyone wants to contact you about coaching, I think I've not got any coaches, any students at the moment. They all sacked me because I realised how useless I was. But anyway, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel because without that, it won't get promoted on the algorithm and I won't make any money. Well, I don't make any money anyway, but anyway, that's all I care about is money. Yeah. We should the next podcast we'll do will be on money. Chess and money. That'll be an interesting one. Chess and cash. Yeah. Okay,
It'll be a
thank you,
very short podcast.
Tristan. Yeah, thank you, Tristan.
All
And
right.
I'll speak to you soon. Yeah, see you later, mate. Right.